The Sith Cult of Ragnos are making their final big play in Korriban, homeworld of the ancient Sith. They're trying to resurrect Marka Ragnos, one of the most powerful Sith Lords of all time, because you don't name your entire cult after the guy, and not go through the trouble of bringing him back from the dead to take over the galaxy. Even if it costs Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy every student and teacher, they won't be allowing the cult to succeed, especially star student Jaden Korr, Kyle Katarn's apprentice, as he fights through the cultist barely clinging to life, not able to tap into the healing powers of the Force or Bacta, only hoping his shields will keep him alive as he barely avoids being cut down while trying to reach the cult's leader before she can succeed. Even then, when every saber-carrying member of the cult is a grave threat to the badly damaged Jedi, you know that their highly skilled leader, Tavion, isn't going to be halted without quite a fight. The young Keldor would need every trick in the book to succeed in overcoming the cult leader, and even if he does, what happens when Ragnos is brought back anyway, possessing Tavion and unleashing his fury on the exhausted Jedi? Things don't look so good for Jaden, but you might be wondering, isn't this the end of the challenge, Shenanaloon? This is actually as close to the beginning as I can get, as unfortunately I somehow misplaced Jaden's no healing adventure against the Cult of Ragnos, only possessing footage of the final 2 levels. 335 deaths, 10 plus hours minimum, nearly all of it wiped away. But while his adventure may be missing, there's always her adventure, as I begin again. Jaden Korr is canonically, to the no longer canon legends, this sad little human man. No offense to him, because of course, once again in a galaxy of possibilities and so many alien species, it's always a human at the center. It's not difficult for us to identify with aliens, or we wouldn't love Ahsoka, Chewbacca, Yoda, Grease, Kit Fisto, Plo Koon, Hera, and many more, would we? So please, give us more alien main characters. Thankfully, as you saw with the Keldor version of Jaden, and now the Zabrak version, I'm not limited to such a bland approach. It would be a lot easier to customize them though, if they'd sit still for a moment. But I guess these Jedi main characters do love being always on the move. I hope they also love being gravely injured, as I'm limited to no healing as was recommended, which means this red bar can't regenerate by any means other than regaining it between levels. But I am able to regenerate my green shield bar as it's not my health, all while on master difficulty. Let's go see if this Jaden will have better luck against the cult, or if luck doesn't exist as the Jedi say, then I hope the Force will have my back more often this time around. Having my personal space invaded despite clearly putting 3 seats between me and the now in-my-face Rosh, followed by our ship getting shot down by crazy cultists, isn't the best way to put me in a good mood. So I'm sure you can understand why my very first action upon gaining control is to chase down and murder Rosh for his social blunders. That will show all you socially anxious people in my audience that you're not crazy for thinking the worst will happen when you commit social oopsies. But in an alternative timeline where Jaden doesn't murder her fellow student over something so small, the two will fight their way through the native howling wildlife and unleash that murder instinct on a couple stormtroopers and the first Ragnos cult member she finds, easily slicing them up without a scratch on her. Something she will gain plenty of a moment later while spying on the cult breaking into the titular Jedi Academy before she wakes to the welcome sight of her new master, Kyle Katarn. Kyle's ready to train her and Rosh together as his new students, if she can resist the urge to kill Rosh, that is, and that's a big if. Good thing Katarn is such a legend, so he can show Jaden why it's a really bad idea to go around stabbing everyone you meet. That is, until he unleashes her upon the galaxy with her first set of missions, perfectly suited for a newbie Padawan. Long as Chewbacca's there to help fight off these low-life mercenaries in this Tatooine hangar, that is. Previous Keldor Jaden would experience far more trouble than this Zabrak Jaden, as I've since learned to combine Force Protection, which reduces the level of damage I take, with Force Speed, so I'm making it as hard as possible for any enemy to land a strike. This is my go-to strategy every fight, so get used to seeing me green. That, and sprinkles of force, pull, and push to keep my enemies off balance, making light work of the mercenary forces, though that wouldn't have been the case without a shield station to re-up my shields. Light work doesn't mean deathless, as I discover stabbing a grenade holding Gran at point blank isn't one of my better plans. I wish I could take Chewie on all my adventures, but I guess Han can't spare him, so I'll have to massacre these Tuskens all by my lonesome. Jaden must feel very attuned to Anakin's spirit, as she follows his path, killing every Tusken in sight with ease, and really maximizing that attunement by burning to death multiple times trying to traverse this sandcrawler. When does she get the cool armor to go along with it? That's what I wonder. Jaden is having zero trouble dealing with her Padawan duties, taking down a whole Imperial operation by her lonesome, parkouring across the sand so she isn't eaten by an Alaskan bullworm, and completely missing her jump while moving across the speeding cargo train. That last one is less impressive. It doesn't help when she follows it up by touching the electric do not touch part of the train, and with her quality of life now zilch, decides to speed up the reset the old-fashioned way. Dying by electricity, she really is speedrunning Anakin's life. But when your saber one-shots every enemy you come across, you only really have to worry when you have the terrible idea to spray and pray with a blaster rifle, leaving yourself defenseless and easily gunned down as you miss every shot. I say you, but we all know I mean me, of course, but this wording makes it easier for my self-esteem. Doing all this in heals is also surprisingly good for my self-esteem. With my first set of missions complete, I've learned enough to go on a solo mission to Hoth to investigate the cult's actions as they siphon Force energy from important places like where Luke had a vision of Obi-Wan. I immediately learn on Hoth that while I can easily kill a Wampa using Force speed to stay ahead of its swipes, I feel morally wrong in doing so, and would rather restart my adventure here. It's a much better feeling to wipe out the fascist lovers running around out here, but I will also force a checkpoint restart if these monsters kill my Tauntaun pals. Let's ignore that it was clearly the tip of my saber that accidentally killed the poor baby, and not the Imperials. But that's what resetting is for. Just wish they'd have more of a survival instinct and move away from the glowing death stick. Resetting is less my choice when I discover trying to 1v1 an ATST with my saber is another terrible plan as much as it works for Cal Kestis. But unloading a turret on it is a much better plan. With force speed and protection in my favor, plus plenty of shield boosters, the Imperials are really just a light workout. After leaving behind a sea of corpses, I'm put up against Tavion's apprentice, Alora. I've come a long way from wildly swinging my lightsaber with reckless abandon and just hoping I'll hit my enemy without getting hit myself, as now, I only do that half the time. Jedi Academy has one of the best lightsaber combats ever, even after all these years, but I'm not so good at understanding it, and while that's not much trouble with handling Alora, it's going to be a major issue later on. Sensing she's not the main character here, Alora jumps away to safety, forcing the envious Jaden to watch as she escapes. Gonna have to go out and immediately learn to jump better, so that kind of issue doesn't occur again. And now that Jaden is promoted to apprentice, that's exactly what she learns, improving all her basic force abilities. Something I especially love both for the better auto deflection and the improved force speed. I need all the speed I can get when I'm trying to outrun a Rancor while freeing prisoners from a hut. Did you know Rancors are actually a rather gentle species, and the rage that we normally see on display is due to being provoked and trained to be that way? Domesticated ones even imprint on the first person they see and have lifelong loyalty. The kind of fun facts that these prisoners do not care to hear as we're chased down the halls. Only one that stood still long enough to listen to me got grabbed by the Rancor, and while I did convince the Rancor to let him go, the prisoner was only half the man he used to be, so I don't think he appreciated my trivia. Just as I'm sure Jaden didn't appreciate getting unexpectedly shot in the back right at the end of the level, restarting almost the entire level. But at least it gives me more time to teach them about how Rancors often give birth to twins. It's nice to have people to share facts with, since most people I meet end up dead.
I wish I was dead.
The next mission involves meeting an informant for vital information on the cult. Well, I hope it wasn't that vital of information. Skedaddling away on a speeder, this level is all about looking as cool as possible, which is pretty easy with one saber out, cutting down enemies in slow-mo. Something that would be much harder to do if they used their speeders to stay behind Jaden and shoot from afar, instead of getting right next to the lady wielding the melee weapon. But then, she wouldn't look as cool, and we can't have that. Joining up with the famous Rogue Squadron leader Wedge Antilles, we're here to seize control of this Imperial gas factory, because, well, let's see why in the mission briefing as the game loads. Okay, I hope you could force speed read that, because that's the most I know too, but I never really need much reason to ruin the Imperial's day. The only problem is the imps are finally putting up a fight, and not making this sabotage easy on me. especially the flying units who let loose from above. I struggled so much against them as Keldor Jaden that now I know a simple application of Mind Trick, Stab Stab, Mind Trick again till they're dead, or just wait next to a doorway for them to walk through and Stab Stab, and they're not nearly as much trouble. I'm glad to have it a bit easier after chasing down this crime lord selling warbots. These warbots would tear me apart normally, but I came prepared with an ion blaster, which turns the bots into scrap without any trouble. Those will be my happy memories to keep me warm in prison, as I'm ambushed and captured by cloaked Imperials. Good thing the warden of this place gets bored easily, releasing me, so he can hunt me for sport, albeit without my lightsaber to help. I discover I'm very vulnerable to being shot if I don't have my saber to deflect the bolts. Who knew? But force protection, speed up, and the occasional shield boost does keep me alive while I let loose with this awesome shotgun on any unfortunate Imperial I come across. A little playing around with an ATST, being surprised at how dramatically some enemies like to die to this shotgun, and then I'm racing up this hangar before the warden can blast me with his explosive sniper. Good thing I discovered this highly illegal sniper using force stints in the armory earlier, and the warden doing his worst to hide in cover. 2 shots are all I need to dome the crazy Imperial and get back my lightsaber. Once again, all the missions are done, and it's time for Kyle to finally come with me on a mission to Acid Rain Planet as we seek to stop the cultist from siphoning force power from one of Vader's old castles. Jesus! Or I guess I should say Obi-Wan! Vader really did hate to live anywhere remotely nice or safe, huh? Good thing I have my force protection to keep from the burning rain, but I have to act quickly against these armored troopers as their powerful guns will rip me apart. Which is why I prefer to use those exact guns against them before they could do it to me. Kyle isn't much for playing backup, as I somehow lose track of him within the first few minutes of landing, despite him supposed to be by my side the entire mission. But as long as I strike first and hard, the imps don't stand a chance. That is until he enters the fray. He being the first of the stronger lightsaber-wielding cultist, as my level of skill is above the weaker versions, but 50-50 on whether I'll beat these guys. I do beat this one with one swift strike, but not without incurring plenty of damage, which will cost me, as once I blow apart these TIE bombers, I try to take the quickest way out of here, and discover it's actually the quickest way to hell. Second try, the saber duel goes much better, with a decisive force push leaving him open, ensuring Jaden has enough health to survive the fall and break further into Vader's base. Just in time for Kyle to finally show up again and actually help. It's honestly really great to have his help, and I'm sure Jaden would have made it through in one piece, if not for the rocket trooper who decided to fire at her at point-blank range. At least in the Jedi games, they have the decency to die with me. But if on the second try, they're just gonna stare at her aimlessly, I might as well take advantage of that terrible situational awareness of theirs. By now, I've improved my mind trick to the maximum degree, meaning with one tap of the Force, I can make the air troopers help me, and then float there as I murder them without resistance. Mind trick is considered a light side power, but this feels eviler than any of the dark side abilities. Jaden's gonna need it though to survive the cultist without Kyle by her side when he suddenly dies! Okay, so he's not dead, but that was the most dramatic scream for the most calm follow-up question.
At least none of us lost our cool.
Since they're separated, Jaden's odds of survival against all these Force wielders popping up has plummeted. I'm miles better at fighting than I was, and with Force Absorb ensuring they can't use the Force to kill me, I can get through most of them, but every fight against an adept saber user is a gamble. I struggle to learn how to improve my combat skills at the speed I lose, unable to tell what I do exactly wrong, but I'm convinced it has something to do with their blade. Follow along carefully here. When their blade cuts into my body. That's about all I can tell. I often forget that if I'm attacking, I can't be blocking as well, and so rapid strikes usually just cost me my life. And it's better to follow the path of Sorisu. Wear down my opponent through defense, and wait for my chance to land a blow when they give an opening. A sound idea that I rarely execute well, but using force speed I do so enough to reach Rosh. He's been brainwashed by the cult into being one of them, which means I finally won't get in trouble for attacking him. Hurrah! Absorb keeps his allies from being in any trouble, and Rosh always did suck at fighting, so it's barely even a fight before he's down. But not dead, as Tavion sucker punches us and brings down rubble on Jaden, fleeing with Rosh while Kyle saves his apprentice. Being promoted to Jedi Knight, I can't help but wonder that if I'm almost single-handedly ruining the cult's day everywhere I go, what is our extremely powerful Grandmaster doing other than posing around the Academy all day? Guess he had his movies and wants to give us a chance to shine, but Jaden is not living up to those expectations. It says a lot that it's taken me a little over 4 hours to reach this final act of our story, but this last act will take another 4 hours to finish, as most of the enemies have lightsaber and force skills that match mine. With a 50-50-ish chance of winning each fight and no healing allowed, the odds just are not in my favor. I see why Han doesn't like to be told the odds. Now I just feel awful and pessimistic. Nothing a little explosives can't help. Sometimes I win without getting scratched. Sometimes I'm barely breathing. And most times, I'm just dead. I do like having my double-sided saber staff though, because if the goal is to put the blade in the enemy before they can do the same, I figure double the blade, double the chances. Who needs a blade when a swift kick will show these cultists why standing next to ledges is a bad plan? My next mission is to disable a planetary force field before it can fall into the wrong hands, but that's proving quite difficult to do with all these Nogri running around, shooting lethal gas weapons that can't be blocked, and my shields are useless against. This can make a woman rather nervous, and forces Jaden to lock in, relying on speed more than ever to kill each of the alien assassins before they can land a shot. At least I can unwind between fighting the assassins by luring the Dark Force users into learning the woes of gravity, a lesson we must all learn sooner or later. I personally think I've learned the lesson more than enough, but I guess not. Still, neither have these assassins, and that helps me out a lot. Joining with her master again, Jaden and Kyle are captured by Imperials while investigating where Rosh originally disappeared. Kyle intends to cut through the locked doors, while Jaden runs through the ship chopping up all the Imperials, but I do try and help him open up those doors a little bit faster. I don't think he appreciates the design of my double-sided blade, as I try to assist though. Heading on before Katarn decides to stab me again, the Imperials don't offer much challenge as long as I take out their armored troopers as fast as possible, because these tight quarters don't do me much favors fighting them. Also, I need to be careful not to accidentally step into any medpacks that will heal me, or that will reset me as much as a laser to the face will. Without lightsaber users to assist, the Imperials can't offer much of a fight, making it easy to destroy their ship and fly to freedom. Just for Jaden's life expectancy to get cut short as she destroys these old weapon stockpiles and in drops Boba Fett, the legendary bounty hunter. Legends Boba couldn't do me a favor and stay on Tatooine, could he? No, he has to chase me all over the space, turning Jaden's life into a horror game as I flee from him, watching for him with Force sense, only for him to vanish and suddenly appear right next to me. What kind of clone magic is this? I don't stand a chance against Fett, striving instead to destroy the rest of the stockpiles as fast as I can so I can hightail it out of there. But of course, I'm not allowed to leave unless Boba is beaten. Normally, I can't get close without being barbecued for my trouble, but I do manage to land a strike in midair, and then waiting for the hunter to float on back down, Jaden finishes the fight unexpectedly fast. Thing is, he's the Boba Fett, so he's fine and just flies away to go ruin some other poor sap's day, but at least I'm free from that nightmare.
I believe that Tavion is storing force power in the scepter for one purpose, to resurrect Marco Ragnos.
Is that possible?
The Force holds a great many secrets. It may be possible that if a high enough concentration of Force energy is infused into a body, the cells might regenerate, bringing the person back to life.
Sure, that might as well be possible. Just don't tell this little tidbit to Anakin. But before Jaden can stop the Sith resurrection, it's time for a detour with Kyle to see about saving Rosh from the dark side. There's quite a lot of fighting to do here, but Jaden is up to the challenge with the ever-handy Force speed, protection, absorb, and mind trick to handle most issues. But as I've mostly ignored dark side abilities, I never realized the value of Force lightning against the saber users, as it's actually quite effective at breaking down their health, zap by zap, as long as I keep my distance. I guess Palpatine and Dooku were onto something after all. Still, the fighting doesn't seem to end as there's always more enemies popping out the woodwork, and Jaden falls often. But slow and steady is the way to victory. That, and manually saving every now and then, cause these checkpoints are very few and far between. At least my reward of doing so is coming across Rosh, and being offered the choice to give into the dark side and kill him, or let go of my hate and spare him. Jaden thinks back to all the fun times they had together, and is very tempted to kill the unlikable apprentice. But that would mean the final boss of the game is Kyle Katarn himself, and also every allied Jedi would be trying to kill Jaden, making the final level far more impossible. Still, that alone is not enough to stay Jaden's blade. The thought that Obi-Wan could go through all that he did and not fall to the dark side meant Jaden falling over something as petty as a mildly obnoxious kid would be a pretty dumb reason. So Rosh gets to live for once. Minus an arm though, thanks to Allura. Whoops! Allura is far superior than she was during the earlier Hoth duel, and so much more than any other fight, Jaden is defeated over and over. It doesn't help that Jaden showed up to this fight with only 5 health to her name. Saberlocking Allura ends up with 2 blades going right through Jaden's neck, and trying to straight up outfight her ends up with a multitude of sliced up Jadens, or pushed into oblivion Jaden. Take your pick. Force speed does me no good, cause she matches me with force speed of her own, negating my best weapon. I'm finding it really difficult to understand what I'm doing wrong with how fast I die, and so I can't learn to do better. But when I can't improve one way, that just means finding a different solution. Like tapping into the old Jedi patience pool to take advantage of Allura's main weakness. She can't seem to keep track of me if I run around these 2 crates and pelt her sporadically with lightning whenever I have enough force power. It's not a legendary duel, but it does allow me to slowly reduce her health enough before rushing in for the kill when she throws her sabers, leaving herself defenseless and finally beatable. With Rosh alive and Kyle getting him to safety, Jaden must head to Korriban to fight through the cult forces alongside her fellow Jedi. As she falls time and time again to the superior skills and numbers of the cult, she can't help but wonder, why wasn't she the one to take Rosh to safety while the far more skilled Kyle goes to Korriban? And where the heck is Luke Skywalker in all this mess? Never does she see him once as she battles through the many cultists, barely clinging to life. Sometimes it's okay to help the students, you know, since we're all dying out here. My fellow students love to show off how they can heal their wounds, but at least I can climb a wall without falling to my death, something neither the cultist nor my fellow Jedi seem to have figured out.
I will.
The fighting is hellish, since I'm nearly always close to death or actively dying. So by the time I reach the final stretch with literally only a single health point to my name, I rely on using my fellow students as distractions while I sprint past the enemy. Just gotta be extra careful about landing safely, or I won't need an enemy to do me in. Also, I can reach Tavion and prepare for the final duel. Thanks to Keldor Jaden's many sacrifices, I actually know the cultist leader, while still very dangerous, has a massive weak spot. As long as I'm sped up, I can get in close while Tavion tries to laser beam me and cut her up, ending her threat before she ever gets a chance to do anything more. Well, except successfully resurrect Ragnos, and then I have a real fight on my hands. A fight I'm not skilled enough to survive, no matter how I try, since I'd struggle at full health, and here, I have none. I am more than ready to spend a good long while dying at their hands trying to learn. But trying to wait for my chance to strike works wonders as I luck into saber locking and one-shotting the Sith Lord before either of us even knows what's happening. The Force was with me after all.
And Tavion?
Dead. When Ragnos possessed her, her body couldn't withstand the corruption.
I also think her body couldn't handle the numerous lightsaber cuts, but I guess we're ignoring that detail.
Thank you, Master Skywalker. But I couldn't have done it without Kyle.
I most certainly had to do nearly all of it without Kyle, so I disagree. Huzzah! After 335 deaths in my initial run, I did far better on my second go-through, with only 150 deaths after 8 hours 35 minutes, proving you can beat all of Jedi Academy without healing, something I've done twice now. I thank you all for watching, it always means a lot, and I hope you enjoyed this academic journey where I actually seem to have learned how to fight better. I may not be the greatest saber duelist around, but it felt good to improve so much by the second try. Now to end this video by rubbing into Rosh how I'm the better student.
You deserve it, Jaden. You're the best student I've ever trained, and a terrific Jedi. You're the best student I've ever trained.
What? Just because I spared him doesn't mean I can't gloat a little. See you later, friends. Have a wonderful academic day.